Hi, thanks for tuning in today to Front Porch Conversations here at Advent Christian Village. Today we're in the Harmony Center, and a little different take on our guest today. Our guest is a retired employee of Advent Christian Village and known to many of you. It's Dede Stoddard. Dede, thank you so much for being here and agreeing to this.
Well, Ann, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. It's a privilege to be here.
Why don't you tell our visitors where you live now and how you came to be here today?
Following retirement, I made a move after about a year when I had retired, and I sold my home here in the village, and I moved to Kittery, Maine, to Meeting House Village, and I moved in there to a one-bedroom apartment, and I've been there now for the better part of 5 years.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. It's a good thing to have fun when time flies.
Yes. And for our viewers that may not know, what is the Meeting House?
The Meeting House is it's out of the Advent Christian Organization. It was developed over 100 years ago, and it has a south campus. It has a main building with the administrative offices, and then the building that I live in is called the White House. This is not out of Washington, D.C., but it's called the White House with 4 nice white columns in the front of the building. And I live on second floor there and get to know all the people that live around me and make good friends as I live there.
Dede, would you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and about your early life?
Yes, I'd love to do that. Before I do that, I would like to make a comment to those that are watching or listening to this interview. And I would like to say that as I interview and take questions that are about my life, I would like to clarify that really when you describe what happens to your own life as you live it, sometimes we express it with a lot of I's. I did this, I went there, I met this person, and all of a sudden you realize that you're just talking a lot of I's. This is a privilege for me, but I just want the listeners and those watching to know that my life has been directed by God, and I have had the call of God in my life. And so anything that goes on and has any fruit to it or any blessing to it, that belongs to God. And I would like that to be really an understanding as you listen, but this is a privilege to do this interview.
Dede, where were you born?
I was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, and my dad had come from the northern part of Maine to Worcester right at the end of the Depression because he had to find work. And so he and my mother made a move to Worcester, and my brother, who is 2.5 years older than me, he went with them. At that time, I wasn't born yet, but soon after they were in Worcester, got settled, Dad had a job. There was a gleam in the eye of my father toward my mother, and afterwards I was born. So that was a privilege, but only for 6 months in Worcester. So the most of my life there I don't remember, but I do know that my mother took the train. When it was time, they took the train from Boston back up to northern Maine, and after 6 months, and we all lived there, a family of 4.
And that was in what town?
That was the little village of Crouseville, Maine.
And for many Advent Christians, they know about the church there, right?
Yes, it was a beautiful little church right in the center of the village of Crouseville, and we all gathered there. We had wonderful Sunday school classes, and we had pastors come in to the church and really built the church, made good contact with the people in the village, and I grew up from the age of about 6 or 7 through the rest of my life, having the privilege of Sunday school as well as fellowship with the people in the church. So it was a great time.
Well, as I've gotten to know you, Dede, one of the pictures I have trouble envisioning is what you did as a child for employment.
Well, as any of you will recall that know about northern Maine, it's potato harvesting country. And at the age of 6 and 7 years old, I was out in the field with the rest of my family in potato harvest. And I picked potatoes there in a basket. I had a basket that I could fill 4 times, and when I emptied those baskets in, the barrel would fill, and a ticket would go on the barrel, and I got 25 cents for that barrel. However, the harvest lasted 3 to 4 weeks, maybe longer. And my parents taught me that as soon as I could in my life, I should bear some responsibility for my own clothes, because clothes for school, clothes for play, winter coats. And in 4 weeks, as a young child, I could earn enough money to get my own winter coat and my new clothes for school. And that was very exciting, because the Sears and Roebuck catalog was where I shopped as a kid. So that was a great time, and not so easy. 6 o'clock in the morning out to the field, and then come back in again 5 o'clock at night. And we were so happy to get Mom's hot meal.
I bet.
Yes.
Dede, you have so many stories to share, so let's kind of move along. And would you talk about after high school? You went to high school there in Crouseville as well. Then what happened?
Oh, sorry. I went, actually I graduated from Washburn High School, which was about 4.5 miles from Crouseville. And I went to high school, graduated from there, and I was so happy to be through school. I didn't want to go on to college. I didn't have any initiative to really do that. The night of my graduation from high school, I just kind of I threw the diploma in the air and announced to my parents I was not going to go on for any other schooling.
But something changed that, and you had to eat those words, right?
Yes, I did. And so I went to work full time, and once I went to work, it was important to help my parents, my family. Dad did all he could to provide, but so I went to work full time at W.T. Grant Company in Presque Isle, Maine, and I worked there for 1 year. And there were ladies that worked there. My goodness, they had worked there for maybe 30 years or more at W.T. Grant. And they were so kind to me. When I would go to work there, they would encourage me not to settle with that for my life, but to really think about what I wanted to do in life and to think seriously about going on to college. So that's what I did.
And where did you begin college?
I began college in Lenox, Massachusetts at Berkshire Christian College, and managed to, I thought I'd go 1 semester, but I ended up going 4 years and graduating. And it was worth it all to do that, and my parents were pleased about it. My brother came to graduation. It was great with family around. Yeah.
And where did you first find a calling for what you later did?
When I graduated from Berkshire Christian College, it allowed me, it was the first year they had training where it would be on-the-job training my senior year and prepare me for the future. And I was interested in social work there. And it was the first year that Berkshire was having people do internships. My internship was for 6 weeks. And can you guess where I did intern?
No, I can't.
I interned here for 6 weeks in the senior year of my college training.
And I thought I'd heard lots of stories from you over the years, but I did not know that.
Yeah, I think I know. I forgot to mention that to you. Yes. So I 5 years I did that. And the 5th year I worked at social work. More and more that 5th year, I started to sense God really moving in my life. I didn't know what it meant, but I was in the Hope Church in Lenox, Massachusetts. I attended there while I did social work those first years. One evening, it was Jack and Connie Jones' service where they were going to be going on to New Zealand for missionary work for a year. And I was I sang a solo in that service. And when I sang that solo about the breaking of the bread and how Jesus fed those people, thousands of people, and how he was along the shores of Galilee and made sure that people got fed, but it was through miracles. That when I sang that song and sang the lyrics, I felt like no one else was in that church but myself and the presence of God. And I was so drawn to really give my life. I thought, I gave my life to the Lord, but I didn't just give my life to the Lord for one day. I gave it to him for a lifetime. And I went home that night in my little apartment in Lenox, and I got on my knees, and I really fully dedicated my life for whatever he wanted. And then through the Advent Christian headquarters that was in Charlotte, North Carolina, I learned about a mission to alcoholics in Helsinki, Finland. And so that I ended up there. But so I don't stretch this story too long, but I'll leave it there. But it was a key time that changed my life forever.
And just what you said, it's unique that this morning you had a phone call with Jack Jones.
Yes, I did.
Full circle, many years later.
Full circle, first. And the interesting thing that Jack's call to me had to do with a Finnish person in Finland that he wanted to know about. So it really is. Because my thinking was that because Jack and Connie were going to go to New Zealand for 1 year, when they went on after 1 year, I thought God would call me to New Zealand to go there. And that was not the case. So this was a very interesting time.
And also we've talked about when you were in Sunday school, you had a Sunday school teacher that talked to you all about missionaries.
I certainly did.
And many of those names are people we know here or have known through the years.
Yeah, absolutely. My Sunday school teacher, from the time I was 6 and 7 years old, she wrote letters to me all through my high school to encourage me to follow God. And she kept in touch even after I went to as a missionary to Finland eventually. But she kept in touch with me all through her life.
And many people here will know who that was.
Yes, that was Hilda Northup that lived over 100 years. And when I came to work here, I went to visit her. I couldn't thank her enough for how she had encouraged me through my life.
And we never know what footsteps are going to cross our paths again, or what you'll meet in somebody's life.
Yes.
But that's a great blessing to be able to put those together.
Yes, it is.
In total, how long were you in Finland?
I was actually in Europe. I was in Finland a total of about 10 years. However, during that time that I was in Europe and I traveled with team, I joined a team of missions and went to Helsinki. I was 10 years in Finland, 2 years in England, and 1 year in Holland during that time. And that was all team missions, traveling like that. But we located ourselves in Helsinki, and then we did a lot of work and travel over into what was the former Soviet Union.
And I know about things you did going there. What did you do that was a little risky?
Well, we traveled by train from Helsinki. We would travel through to White Russia, over into Hungary and Poland and those places. And I trained singing groups in Finland, and we would travel as a singing group to get ourselves in so that we could carry a message in to the people that we had contact with in those countries. And so there were times we took the train to cross over, and we were hours and hours on the train, and the officials would come and line us up at nighttime from our bunks in the train and check out everything. And we kept moving. We kept doing as much as we could in those days. And I'm so glad, because churches were planted as a result of that work. Yeah.
And God safely saw you through that.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And during that time, was that during the time your parents came to live in Delling Park?
Let's see, no. Actually, I had come back. I had returned from overseas missions. And it was shortly after that, I was making a move myself, and then I got the phone call from Mom and Dad, because every winter they were beginning to spend time here. They would travel to see my brother in Miami, make a stop here for about 6 weeks in the winter time and enjoy this. And then, much to our surprise, they made a decision to sell out in northern Maine. The reason that was so astounding to us was because my mother designed the house that she wanted Dad to build, and it was a little small house back in the 40s that where Dad couldn't get enough money from the bank to do all of it. So he started to build the garage, then couldn't get money for the house. So what he did was he turned the garage into a 2-room home for us until he could get more money, and then it became the house that Jack built. Mm-hmm.
From the time you came as a student to do your internship, did you ever picture yourself living here?
No.
Or your parents?
No, not at all. But that's how God is. Sometimes he surprises us and puts us where we never planned, just like many of you that are watching this and listening to it. Perhaps you identify with what it means to make those big moves, and God talks to you and you sell out and you make your move because he calls you.
Dede, after you were no longer in the mission field in Finland or Europe, what was your next path?
My next step after that, surprisingly, was that I connected with Maryland Bible College and Seminary out of Baltimore, Maryland. And that was surprising that I did, because I went back to northern Maine and I did a year or so of social work there. And then I heard about this college, and so I made a visit there. I enjoyed it a lot, and then I had this experience in missions, and was offered a job at that Maryland Bible College and Seminary as an instructor to teach 2 subjects. One was human behavior, the other one was introduction to counseling. And I also was Dean of Women at that college. I spent 18 years there prior to making a move to here to Florida.
And your move here to Florida had to do with your parents?
Definitely. By this time, Mom and Dad had made their move, sold out their home, made their move. Then, as the aging process went on for them, my dad in 2004 had a stroke. 2003, he had a stroke, passed away 2004. But then my mother remained alone in the home, and she couldn't be alone. So I packed up my things in Baltimore, and I made a move to live with her. And I felt, in a way, in my heart, I felt like I owed her that. I was not married. I had had an amazing time in overseas missions, but I felt like God wanted my mother and I to have time together. And we had four wonderful years before she had a fall and broke some bones, and then she also was in the nursing home here. But my parents had phenomenal care here, and it was wonderful. So I needed to work, and just as I arrived to make my move, live with my mother, the same day there was an opening in social services here at the village. I replaced Darlene Hendricks.
Who moved on to other things.
Who moved on to the church secretary position, yes. Yeah.
Well, Dede, I'm certainly glad that you did, because that's how we got to meet.
Absolutely, yes.
But talk a little bit about your time here as social worker and supervisor of social services.
Yes. It was just a wonderful experience here, because I loved social work. And I honestly loved every day of getting up and going to work. And we were service coordinators, and I worked at that for a few years. Then our director didn't retire, but moved on. He resigned and moved on. And God worked in my life, made the arrangement, and I became director of social services. So I was called to that, and I had the best experience working with the staff. Social work it's not an easy job. It's sometimes you feel at the end of the day that you don't think your work will ever be done, that it's not ever finished. But there's something about it, because it's people, and God loves people. And the dependency upon God was a great lesson for me when I took this job here. And when I realized what it meant in caring for people. But one of the things was I started to believe that all pathways coming to Dowling Park lead you through, if you're Advent Christian, it leads you through Dowling Park at some point in your life, and that's how I felt about it. Because when I was a kid, I put my pennies also in my nickels and dimes. And every fifth Sunday, I put it in there to send it to the village. And so here I was now, growing and getting up in years myself, and I had this privilege here. I can't say enough about the wonderful staff I had. And I'm doing this interview while I have been visiting here for a few days, because I loved those 39 years that Darcy Chapman put into being a service coordinator here. And it was a great surprise
to him
to be here. And Ashley has worked here for many years. I just loved my staff and loved working here. Then Anne came into my life. You came. And we discovered that we could work together and make some things happen. So that was a privilege. And we both had to learn, even though we couldn't accomplish math so well, but we did other things that were wonderful. We could get we could save a dog from running around in the village. We could, work on things that were maybe just out of the ordinary, but we worked together, became friends, and this is wonderful.
And it's been a blessing for me, but I hope each of you today have enjoyed as much as I have being here with Dede and learning more about her and her life and God's leading of that life. Thank you, Dede, so much.
Oh, Anne, thank you. Thank you very much.
And please tune in again to future Front Porch Conversations.